The Florida Department of Transportation is grateful for this opportunity to present this update to the FDOT's Strategic Intermodal System Plan. Our goal today is to inform you about the purpose of this plan, why it matters, highlight the plan elements and emphasis areas, and discuss the proposed focus areas to get your input. The SIS is a statewide network of high-priority transportation facilities, including Florida's largest and most significant airports, spaceports, public seaports, freight rail terminals, passenger rail and intercity bus terminals, rail corridors, waterways, and highways. These facilities represent the primary means for moving people and freight between Florida's regions, as well as between Florida and other states and nations. Florida established the SIS in 2003 for many reasons, all of which are still relevant today. A primary reason was to help meet growing demand for moving people and freight as our population and economy continued to expand. The SIS was envisioned to support Florida's economic competitiveness by connecting our regions to markets within our nation and worldwide. Many industries require access to multiple modes of transportation, providing seamless flows of both people and goods. In addition, the SIS was intended to support the state's community planning goals by focusing transportation investments on existing transportation hubs and corridors, so we can maximize the use of the most current system. Finally, the SIS was intended to focus our essential state resources on those transportation facilities most critical to Florida's economy and quality of life. Florida statute requires the department to update the SIS policy plan at least once every 5 years, following the update to the Florida Transportation Plan, also known as the FTP. The SIS policy plan is developed by reviewing the most recent FTP goals and objectives to ensure the SIS policy plan is in line with the FTP. 2045 is the horizon year for the current FTP, and the SIS policy plan is an implementation action of the FTP. In addition, the process considers current trends and conditions, including applicable performance measures, to ensure the plan addresses key issues and opportunities for the SIS. The process requires collaboration and input gathered through various partner and public outreach efforts, such as partner briefings, social media outreach, virtual outreach, and surveys. The 35-member steering committee that guided the update of the FTP in 2020 is assisting with the update of the SIS policy plan this year. A public comment period will accompany the draft final plan in late 2021. Following the public comment period and final management approval, the final plan will be adopted. The SIS is made up of two basic components: SIS facilities, which meet high levels of people and goods movement, generally supporting major flows of interregional, interstate, and international trips, and strategic growth facilities, which are smaller in nature and generally are designated to support niche markets, underserved geographic areas, or other unique economic communities. The SIS includes 3 types of facilities: hubs, such as airports, seaports, and other types of terminals; corridors, such as highways, rail lines, and waterways; and connectors, which link the hubs and corridors or hubs to other hubs and military access facilities to corridors. The policy document generally addresses and includes the following topics. It defines objectives for how we plan and manage the SIS, consistent with the broader goals for the FTP. It outlines focus areas for the SIS that are to be addressed over the next 5 years as part of the plan update. It sets forth policies or strategies directed towards these objectives and focus areas. And lastly, it sets forth implementation guidance on how to carry the plan forward. The current 2016 SIS policy plan objectives still correlate to the current FTP goals related to mobility, transportation options, and economic competitiveness. They also continue to represent the long-standing framework of the SAS and its original intent. The 2022 SAS Policy Plan will focus on these 5 areas. Safety. How does the SAS, as a key element of the state's transportation system, contribute to our vision of eliminating fatalities and serious injuries on Florida's transportation system? Resilience. How can we reduce vulnerabilities of SIS infrastructure to risks including extreme weather, sea level rise, coastal and inland flooding, wildfires, and extreme heat? Technology and innovation. How do we prepare the SIS for emerging technologies, such as automated, connected, electric, and shared vehicles? Urban mobility and connectivity. How do we address the impact of congestion in both major and developing urban areas on the efficiency and reliability of the SIS for interregional travel, especially in areas where there are limited options for adding capacity to SIS corridors or limited modal alternatives to SIS highways? Rural mobility and connectivity. How can the SIS support rural revitalization and economic development and facilitate emergency evacuation and response while supporting environmental stewardship goals and community visions? For each focus area, we will present some high-level ideas for improvements. Building on the FTP and SHSP, the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, we have identified several potential safety-related policies for inclusion in the SIS policy plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Increase the emphasis on safety as a factor in setting priorities for SIS projects. Provide more flexibility to include safety features as part of SIS capacity projects. Address engineering and operational solutions related to emphasis areas associated with higher fatality rates on the SAS. An example could be to add guardrails, rumble strips, or clear zones to address lane departures. We have identified several potential resilience-related policies for inclusion in the SIS policy plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Consider vulnerabilities in the community and environmental screening process as part of SIS designation. For example, if there are 2 options for a connector and one is in a storm surge zone, designate the alternative. Identify resilience strategies as part of capacity needs and projects. For example, use ITS or sensors to detect hazards and share information. Expand SIS funding eligibility for adaptation or retrofit of existing infrastructure. An example would be elevation change, base layer hardening, or stormwater management to help maintain the SIS facility's safety and capacity. We also might consider expanding the definition of capacity to include increasing redundancy or providing alternatives to mitigate vulnerabilities on the system. We have identified several potential technology-related policies for inclusion in the SIS policy plan. Here are some ideas based on input we received so far. Redefine SIS capacity projects to include technology solutions for improving efficiency and reliability. In other words, define SIS projects not just as increasing the physical capacity of a corridor, but also improving efficiency and reliability. Expand SIS funding eligibility beyond what is in the current plan to provide technology infrastructure, such as electric vehicle charging stations, smart signals, locational reference markers for connected vehicles, broadband for transportation purposes, etc. Provide more flexibility for funding emerging mobility solutions, such as quick response initiatives that could be funded in the current year. We have identified several potential policies regarding urban mobility and connectivity for inclusion in the SIS policy plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Redefine capacity projects to include mobility and reliability improvements, similar to the concept discussed under the technology section. Prioritize opportunities to improve interregional travel on the SIS. An example would be projects to create express or through lanes, create bypasses or other alternatives to bottlenecks, support truck parking or other freight accommodations, etc. This also could include providing more options for travel between Florida's largest urban areas, such as passenger rail or intrastate air service. Provide flexibility for use of SIS funds on non-SIS facilities when that is the best option to improve performance of the SIS. For example, if an SIS corridor is heavily congested and there are no viable options to add capacity to that corridor, could we use SIS funds to improve a parallel, arterial, or transit corridor if that improvement will pull local trips off the SIS and preserve capacity on the SIS for long-distance travel? We have identified several potential policies regarding rural mobility and connectivity for inclusion in the SIS policy plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Reassess the SIS highway corridor criteria, particularly how we identify facilities capable of being improved to controlled access standards. This also could include how we consider context classification in the SIS designation/community and environmental screening process, where there is a choice. Focus SIS designation on the facilities in areas suitable for higher capacity corridors. Redefine capacity projects, in this case to include rural connectivity and through traffic improvements. This might include small projects, such as adding turning lanes or geometric improvements to improve SIS corridor safety. It also could mean expanding funding eligibility for broadband and other rural technology solutions that would improve connectivity. Strengthen rural corridor planning processes to identify programs of projects for both SIS and regional/local corridors. For example, think about how we improve a corridor like US 19, but also the connections from that corridor to rural activity centers. This could include stronger collaboration with local governments on how rural connectivity can support economic, community, and environmental goals. We value your input. Without it, the SIS cannot reflect the feedback from our partners and the public. What else do we need to do to improve these 5 focus areas? There is a public question form available if you would like to give us input. Please give your form to the FDOT representative, or you can email it or mail it to Lori Maribel, FDOT District 7 SIS Coordinator. Her information is at the bottom of the comment form. Following our targeted outreach efforts, we will draft recommendations for the plan based on input received. We will review the information with the FTP/SIS Implementation Committee and FDOT management. The draft plan will be available for public comment at the end of this year on the Systems Planning website. The final plan is anticipated to be adopted by early 2022. Thank you for allowing us to present the SIS Policy Plan Update.